Friends, good evening to all of you. So please let me know whether my voice is audible. Is my voice audible? Fine. So we will continue with our discussions yesterday. In fact, yesterday we had seen the concept of organizational commitment, and then there were some concepts loosely related to this concept called organizational commitment, namely employee empowerment, organizational citizenship behavior, and then employee engagement. So these are the three concepts that are, in fact, they are actually called the trends that were happening for some time. So during the last 20 years, the concept of employee empowerment was so popular amongst the corporate circles, especially in the service sector. So therefore, employee empowerment was such an important concept. In addition to that, for some time, it was very short time actually, OCB or national citizenship behavior was a trend. So corporates expect people to work beyond the official requirements. So people are, they're very confined to their official procedures. If the work, if the rule says I'm supposed to work for 8 hours, I'll do only 8 hours. But OCB is beyond 8 hours in the sense people are willing to exert more efforts even if they were not expected officially. Those are called the OCB. But it lived for a very short time, this concept. But current concept is called employee engagement. So these are the trends actually. So we are not going to see them as subjects elaborately, but I would like to introduce them as uh, passing concepts. So therefore, let us start with the first one called the employee empowerment. In the meantime, so let me greet all of you once again. Good evening, and then I hope you're all doing fine. We are coming to the end of this week, and then after tomorrow, it's going to be a new beginning. So I'm sure by this evening we will be concluding with the syllabus. I hope you're all excited and then waiting for this time, right? And then get ready for the next semester. Get ready for this current job. I would say the current semester exams, and then get ready for the next trend. I'm sure the next semester is going to be extremely challenging because you have to experience a lot of change in your life. So I would always tell people that you must learn to enjoy changes. Otherwise, we always have that resistance because it disturbs our stability, comforts. So one shouldn't be comfortable in life, but that should be a pursuit at the end of as we reach the final moments. But there's nothing called comforts in life. If you are satisfied with the comforts, you don't progress and therefore you don't change. So change and progress are coupled with each other. So, and not only that, many times I keep saying that don't buy peace in life, because once you buy peace in life, you will not perform further. You will not have that passion for achieving higher. You are satisfied, comfortable with whatever you want or whatever you have. So never buy peace. Keep fighting. That's how the life goes on. If you want to achieve higher things of life, you have to you have to keep moving. So that's what I would always repeatedly say again, enjoy changes in life. So with that this preview, let's start with the concept of empowerment. So I'm just uh, presenting you the overview of these concepts. We don't have to go elaborately into it because it doesn't demand in our syllabus. Number two, number three, there are some lessons of failure across the world on this concept of empowerment. But I remember early 80s, I'm sorry, early 90s, this was a very powerful concept across the world. In fact, in Apollo Hospital also, we practiced employee empowerment, but it has its own inherent weaknesses. We will talk about them very quickly. So let's start with the concept. of what is called empowerment. Empowerment concept is always have a clash with the concept called delegation. You know the meaning of it. Delegation is the extent to which the power and responsibility and authority are given away or ascribed to a subordinate manager or a subordinate. That's it. So the extent to which the power, authority, and responsibility are given to the subordinate. So these are the three words that are repeatedly used in both concepts called delegation and empowerment. For example, in delegation, what we do, we give power and authority to the subordinates, but responsibility and accountability are held by the manager. That's why delegation is sometimes not very successful. Why? Because you are giving power to the people, but you are asking them to come back and report what have they done, how did they use the power. That's called delegation. Whereas the opposite of it is empowerment. You give them completely the power and authority and also responsibility. So they will decide whatever they want. They will do whatever they want. They don't have to depend on the boss always. They don't have to come back to the boss always for any kind of help to be extended to the patients. I know at Apollo hospitals, I remember once upon a time it happened that they were at least, every month somebody or the other would come to me for some help, and then maybe for their patients, maybe as attendants, they would expect some kind of discounts. But I have the authority to recommend only 20%. So if it is beyond 20%, I have to consult my boss. That's exactly called delegation. But even if it is 25% or 30%, a maximum is 30%, because any hospital more than 30% is not making margins of profits. So 30% is too much actually. But under certain special or exceptional cases, if the billing in charge is whatever you call billing executive, is empowered to make a decision to give an exemption or discount of 30%. He is empowered. So he doesn't depend on his boss for any further clearances. Whenever you have subordinates experiencing such power, we call it empowerment. So that's how we will gradually move into this concept more vigorously. Let us see. So more distinctions once again. In delegation, we provide power to the people, but we hold the accountability as bosses. Whereas in empowerment, we give power as well as the accountability. So they'll take every decision on their own and they'll come back and report to you. But however, the word of caution is empowerment doesn't succeed if subordinates are not matured, subordinates are not wise enough to make decisions. If they give more discounts to their customers, it is eating away your profits. Not only that, empowerment failed across the world because if employees are empowered to make decisions on their own, why do you need bosses? Why do you need supervisors? That's also another weakness of this concept. So let's see the definition now. Now, Hyde and Petty, they state that empowerment means creating an environment in which employees receive more authority for accomplishments of their work tasks in exchange for accepting responsibility. See, they are also responsible for the outcomes. So that's how the concept of empowerment is. So when you do like this, what happens when you have, let us say, some 20-30 subordinates reporting to you as a hospital manager? So all these 30 employees are responsible for their own work outcomes. Your load is reduced, your supervision time is reduced. You don't have to spend more time supervising these people very closely. In fact, you can spend more time on your own decision making, your innovative practices, and so on. That's the advantage of this concept. Empowerment gives people a lot of status and also information to make effective decisions. And of course, they also make deliberate actions. They also take deliberate actions. It's because they're accountable for the or responsible for the work outcomes. Now, what else empowerment does? It helps employees solve problems and manage change on their own. So they're becoming more matured and more independent. Unfortunately, empowerment it demands a lot of freedom, lot of autonomy, non-interference from the boss. But unfortunately, in certain cultures, it doesn't work. If subordinates doesn't depend on the bosses, they'll make. Of course, it also depends on their maturity. So nobody would care for the bosses. And what if the whole subordinate crowd or the what you call the work group makes mess out of the system? Then you would know the value of managers or supervisors. But look at the positive side of it. If you have matured subordinates, talented subordinates, they can resolve problems on their own. They don't have to come back and waste your time. 8 hours of your time is wasted only on solving the problems of others. When will you solve your own problems? So give power to the people and then let them enjoy the power. Let them also make decisions for their work outcomes, and then let them come back and share their experiences. Then only empowerment concept succeeds, otherwise it fails. Supervisors have to be idly sitting all through the day because nobody will come back and report to the supervisors. In particularly in hospitals, I have seen how this hospital employees, but and then of course in positive organizational cultures, empowerment initiatives result in high levels of meaningfulness, personal influence, and self-efficacy. So employees will experience meaningfulness in their work, their influence in getting things done, and also personally be successful. That's how we define what is called self-efficacy. So these are all the outcomes of the concept of empowerment. Now we move on to the last concept, last aspect of the concept of empowerment. Now as a hospital manager, every time we talk about this, if you are given opportunity to empower your employees, how do you empower them? Because you are convinced the outcomes of empowerment. I think I have a list of that outcomes. So we'll see first outcomes, then we'll go back to that. Now, empowered workers have high levels of concentration, initiative, and resilience. Resilience means ready to change and effective in their jobs. High levels of performance is also emphasized repeatedly. Then it improves job satisfaction. Of course, finally, in one of my research works, I found empowered people will be more loyal. For example, if you see that movies like Bahubali, when Bahubali comes triumphant, winning over the enemy, he is given more power, he is given more position, and then he says, I am going to dedicate my life to the, what is it called, that Samraj, I don't recollect that name of that Samraj, Mahishmati Samraj, I think, yeah. So that's how when you empower your captains in the field in the those days of king's time, the captains will be loyal to their king, loyal to their nation for until they die. So empowerment has such powerful concept. That was I in one of my research works I have demonstrated it. In fact, I have done some research works on empowerment. I will try to show at the end of the class. So let's get back to how do we empower people. Now just note down these points because I'm explaining them. When you give exposure to your subordinates, you are actually empowering them. Exposure to what? Exposure to new learning, exposure to experimenting, exposure to skills, new skills, exposure to new technologies, exposure to new projects. So when you give them exposure, naturally what happens, they're learning, and then not only that, they're visible to the whole world. Otherwise, I have seen in many hospitals, boss is visible, subordinates are hidden. Whenever there is something happening in the hospital, only bosses are visible to the top management, subordinates are not. So in a context of empowerment, bosses give lot of visibility to the subordinates. You bring the subordinate onto the stage and say, I'm proud of this guy, it's because of him we have achieved it. That's what we call visibility. And not only that, protection. When subordinates make mistakes, you protect them. That's the meaning of empowering them. So, giving exposure, giving visibility, and protecting your subordinates is the starting point for empowering them. Then, second point, how do we empower them? Facilitate career development, consciously encourage them to develop in their careers. Career development is not that easy. It's not simply giving higher positions or promotions, but it is coupled with many things: development of competencies, taking challenging assignments, trying to prove worth in those assignments. That's how we define what is called facilitating career development by the managers. And finally, acceptance and encouragement. Accept when they make mistakes, even if they give huge discounts. You first accept them, encourage them, but you tell them realistically, and that's how they become matured managers gradually. So when you give more than 20%, 25%, how does it eat away our profits? Show them, and then therefore you slowly encourage them to make wise decisions, because in an empowerment culture, employees must be encouraged to make wise decisions. Otherwise what happens, when you have too much of power, you will feel like a king, and then you decide all crazy things. That's the problem with this concept of empowerment. So that's it. I will discontinue this topic. So more simply we can say, all empowered people are highly performing people, because they are like winning. All winning people are called the empowered people. Now what we will do, we'll get into the new topic called uh, concept of engagement. This is another interesting concept. I have published some research works on this. I would like to share those links with you, because this is the hot topic today across the world. So there are some national studies about which countries people are more engaged, whether Indians are engaged more, whether Chinese are engaged more, whether Americans are engaged more. Who is more engaged today in this world? You can also guess. Do you think Indians are more engaged? So national level studies are conducted across the world, but what you can do is you can try on Google sometime, type DDL. That's a consulting company, DDL. It's an international company. They have done a lot of studies on employee engagement across the nations. They found Americans are more engaged than anybody else in the world. So we have great lessons to learn from those guys. Since they are more engaged, they are more prosperous nation. Let's see what is this concept. Engagement is defined as a positive attitude held by the employees towards their organization and its values. We know what are those values. Values upheld by the organization, or values enforced by the organization, or practiced by the organization, like fairness, trusting, openness, transparency, being ethical. These are called values of an organization. So an engaged employee is aware of business context, what is happening around the world, he would know, and works with colleagues to improve performance within the job and also for the benefit of the business, of the hospital. So that's how when you're engaged as an employee, you are actually realizing the business goals. And that's the reason, as a hospital manager, you must develop and nurture employee engagement. This is actually demanding two-way relationship between manager and the subordinate employee. So we will slowly move into the definitions. Engagement is the extent to which employees feel passionate about their jobs. That's how we more sharper in defining what is called engagement. People are passionate about their jobs, and gradually they are committed to their organizations. And then finally, they put more efforts out of their, what I would say, discretion means out of their own freedom. Discretionary means wholeheartedly they'll put their efforts in their work. Engagement has such kind of a concept or understanding. Now, is a guru actually called the man who coined the concept of engagement quite a long time, probably in 50s or 60s, in a book called Social Psychology of Organizations. So I think 1956, I suppose. That was the first book on OB in the world. So what he coined, he had identified three aspects or three types of employee engagement. First one is called physical engagement, second one is cognitive engagement, third one is emotional engagement. Many times you'd have noticed in your hospital also, there are some employees who are very active physically. They will be running around so many places. For example, Dr. Ramesh is a classic example of physical engagement. You will find him always on his toes. I don't find him anywhere confined to one room. He's always on the move. For some time he's here, for some time he's there. That's it. He's everywhere. And suddenly he'll disappear from the hospital. He's somewhere in the government offices. So his physical engagement is so high. So, and these guys are, go-getters. They expend their efforts, and they go about their jobs successfully, physically as well as mentally they are involved. Now, the second type of engagement is called cognitive engagement. We know the meaning of word cognition, right? Cognition means thinking, reasoning, understanding. Only human beings have cognitive, under what I would say, cognitions. The remaining creatures would have incompleteness of cognition. You tell me whether any animal has reasoning or understanding. They just think, that's it, and they do, that's it. Reasoning and understanding is not there, and that's why human beings are called higher order creatures in this universe. That's what one of the concepts of OB in the very first class I said is whole, what is it called? Anybody would recollect the, out of that first 4 5 concepts of OB, fundamental concepts of OB? Holistic person, I think I'm just recollecting that concept, holistic, which means when you're employing an employee, you're not employing only a person physically, you're employing completely his physically, mentally, emotionally, morally and socially. That's called completeness of the concept, holistic concept. So the same logic is when you're to be engaged at employees at this at in a company, the employees need to know what their employer's vision and strategies are. So that is what we call understanding, reasoning with the vision and strategies of the company, and what level of performance they need to deliver to contribute to the business goals. That's exactly called cognitive engagement. This is the toughest of all, actually. And then this is another interesting dimension called emotional engagement. How much related are you to the people around, especially your boss? That's what we call emotionally related to people. Some of my friends, this entire week, they were distributing food to these migrant workers. Every morning they would go in the morning around 6 6:30, and then again in the evening 6 6:30 they would go to certain checkposts on the outskirts of the city and give away relief food material, and then also money, and then put them in lorries and send them to their respective hometowns outside Telangana and Andhra. So there are a lot of people from Bihar, Uttar Pradesh. They do not want to stay back in this city at any cost. They want to leave the city. So they are so scared of the city. They came here to work. Last 2 months, nobody took care of them. So they decided never to come back. So my friends were telling me they were when they were given the food, they are not at all interested in having the food. What they want is they just want to quit this place. So you can imagine, are they emotionally engaged? No. Why? Because these last 2 months, their contractors and their real estate bosses have not taken care of them. We call these kind of businessmen unscrupulous employers in the law. When there is a need for masons, you draw them, but now when the masons needed money for survival, they were not taken care of by their bosses, their contractors or businessmen. So they are not emotionally engaged. They have a very bad relationship with the contractors in Hyderabad. I'm sure the same logic is applicable even in your workplaces. If you want your employees to be emotionally engaged, you must be as a good hospital manager. Have healthy relationships with people, and that's why it's a very crucial concept. So let's see how finally engagement happens. I think that's the last slide. So you can see here it starts with I think something happened to this slide. Let me check up. Yeah, yeah. Now it is visible. So when do they feel valued and involved? That's the starting point for engagement. Once they feel valued, for example, these migrant workers who are leaving, there are more than 4 lakh migrant workers. They're leaving. It's a big, I would say it's an exodus of a mass of migrant workers. Such an exodus we have never seen in these recent times. So they feel they are not valued by their business guys, real estate fellows and contractors, and employers in other medium and small scale industries. So therefore, if they had felt that they were valued and then they are involved, naturally they would have engaged today. Now you can imagine after this 31st, you don't have supportive workers in Telangana. How these industries will run, how real estate work will run, how masons will be available. They are going away. People who cut tiles, all are Biharis actually. Flooring tiles. They are the ones who are specialized in cutting. And the designers, particularly carving works, all carving works are being done by Biharis. So you don't find them. So how your carving works would happen? Plaster of Paris works, ceiling works, roof works. These are the guys who does that. So now it's very difficult to have such kind of talent. So I would say next few months we have this talent crunch in all sectors of business. So now if only our employers had taken care of them, today you would have retained them. Just 2 months it took for them to leave this place because they feel they are not valued, not involved. So now you can see why. So employees, when you provide them training and development and give them long-term careers, they'll feel valued. Similarly, if the immediate management is very friendly with them, they'll also feel valued. Immediate management means immediate bosses. Then when the performance up and performance appraisal is fair, they'll feel valued. When there's good communication amongst them or communication between management and the employees, they feel valued. When you give them equal opportunities and fair treatment, they'll be valued. When you take care of fair pay and benefits, they feel they're valued. When you take care of their health and safety, they feel valued. When you provide cooperation to them, they feel valued. When there is something like friendliness, family friendliness, I know many companies say that we are all like family, but in this lockdown, they didn't bother about their family members. They always treated employees as family members. This is something which I am very uncomfortable. In many workplaces, I have seen that we are like a family. Our employees are our family members, which is a fake statement. Founders or vice presidents or top managements make that. That's not a genuine statement. Just for the sake of making statement, they make. In India, we always have something called claims, and then reality is something different. So that's what they say, that we are all part of a family, but you don't take care of your family members. That is not true. So finally, job satisfaction. When there is job satisfaction, people will feel valued and involved, and naturally concept of engagement happens. So it's not that easy, but I'm sure that when employees are engaged, you can imagine the productivity will be extremely high and the profits will be zooming. That's the concept of engagement. So I'll conclude this concept. Now it's time for us to see what is called organizational citizenship behavior. I think something went wrong with the concept of engagement. I don't know. Nobody had witnessed it. Has our engagement slides moved? I wonder whether there was engagement slides moving. Let me check through. There's something went wrong with the concept of employee engagement. Have you seen the engagement slides? Anybody? Because I didn't notice the streaming. I was just looking through the PPT slideshow. Did you see any slides on employee engagement? Yeah, something happened. Even I didn't notice it. So let's me around. Anyway, I have just given an explanation on that. Let's slowly move. Now, we have already defined what is called employee engagement. It's a positive attitude towards our nation and its values. And then engaged employees are always aware of the business context, that means the environment, business environment, and they work with their colleagues to improve the performance. And they also develop and nurture engagement, and then it requires two-way relationship between employer and the employee. Then we have seen more technically, it's a extent to which employees feel passionate about their jobs and committed to their organizations, and also put discretionary efforts into their work. Discretionary means wholeheartedly. And Khan was the one who defined, he was a pioneer in defining concept of engagement, and he found three dimensions, namely physical engagement, cognitive engagement, and emotional engagement. So in physical engagement, you could see that people are so actively moving around the workplace. Their presence is exciting to everybody. They are not only running around, they also make people run around. That's called physical engagement. Whereas cognitive engagement is the toughest of all because it involves thinking, reasoning, and understanding. And you have to understand as employees the vision and strategies of the business, and what level of performance you have to deliver that could contribute to the business goals. That's what we call cognitive engagement. And finally, emotional engagement. I've given you a lot of illustrations about migrant workers. why they're not emotionally engaged during the last 2 months, why they've lost their passion for work, because the bosses have not taken care of them. So this is the slide I was explaining without realizing that it was not streaming actually. So how does employee engagement happen? Unless employees feel they're valued and involved in their workplaces, engagement doesn't happen. But how do they feel valued and involved? It's because of these issues like training, development, and career. We have already explained all of them. Immediate bosses, performance and appraisal, communication, equal opportunities and fair treatment, fair pay and benefits, health and safety, cooperation, family friendliness, and job satisfaction. All of these would contribute to the employees feeling valued and involved. That results finally in engagement. So I'm sorry about that. I didn't notice that it was not streaming at all. So I think with that we will close this concept of engagement, and now we will move on with what is called OCB, Organizational Citizenship Behavior. This is a little technical, but many times I have realized that management is not much interested in OCB. They say that you just work for what you are expected to work for. That's the way they define what is called OCB. So what do we mean by OCB? I hope you're able to see the slide. Yeah, it takes something like 12 seconds of difference from me and to you. So what is organizational citizenship behavior? Let us slowly start with the definition, because this is a very hot topic across the world today. I'm sorry. Uh, this is I'm sorry. This is not the hot topic. Employee engagement was the hot topic, but this is a passing trend. It's not a hot topic. It was a passing trend, in the sense it was once upon a time. During the last 10 years, it was very popular concept. Now it is slowly fading away. So what I'll do, I'll quickly explain you what is this concept. Then we'll take a 5 minutes break, because we have to do some extra work today, because I'm going to give you some questions for the examination and then preparations for that, some inputs on how to prepare for the exam. So therefore, we will have a break after this concept called OCB. Then we'll come back again. Even if it costs us 10 extra more minutes or 15 more minutes, let us stay back and finish off this work. So what is OCB? Organizational Citizenship Behavior. It is explained by one word called willingness. OCB is the willingness of employees to put efforts beyond formal requirements or duties. Obligation means duty. Dictated by their position, has long been recognized as an essential component of effective performance. So, for example, I'll give you in a hospital, I have noticed this many times. When the shift is over, a nurse has to get out of her workplace, and then the reliever is also late. Once the reliever comes, then only the first shift nurse can go home. If the reliever doesn't come back, turn up, the first shift nurse has to work for second shift. That is normal practice in hospitals. But what if the reliever is late, she is on the way, but the first shift nurse has to go home a little early because there's some commitment? Do you think the first shift nurse will simply leave her case loads, case sheets, and go away? If there's an injections to be given to some patients, some medicine tablets have to be given to some patients, some treatments have to be done, do you think ignoring all such work she would go? She would not, because her time is only 5 o'clock. But until the reliever comes, if this nurse stays back beyond 5 o'clock, give all those injections, give all those medicines away, and then goes, then I would say she had expressed OCB. she had manifested OCB. But if somebody who's very careless, I said, nothing doing, my time is over, I'm going away. Let the reliever come and then she will decide. That means she didn't express her OCB. That's how we have an illustration of what is called OCB. Now again, CADS is a gentleman is known for the book I was referring to called The Social Psychology of Organizations back in 1952 or 56, I think it was published. Katz and Kahn both were the authors of that book. Katz and Kahn, Daniel Katz and Robert Kahn. Both of them have written these issues. So what Daniel Katz says is that OCB is employees willingly contributing extra efforts for the realization of business goals. So that's what you can think of, willingness to contribute extra efforts. Why extra? Nobody's paying you for extra, and that's why it's called OCB, citizenship behavior. Now, what determines, what are the causes of OCB? So, very quickly, I'll explain you. Job satisfaction, commitment contributes to OCB. Role perceptions, like in the case of nurse, I told her, her role is so important for that patient. How can she simply live like that? So, role perceptions contribute to OCB. Then, yesterday, I talked about leader member relationships. Leader subordinate relationships contribute to OCB. Fairness in the workplace contributes to OCB. If organizations are very fair, I'm sure people will stay back for late and do their jobs. Then individual dispositions, that means individual personality, basically I'm talking about. A good personality of individual contributes to OCB. Then a lot of motivational theories contribute to OCB. Finally, an employee's age also contributes. If you're older employee, you would always contribute to the good of the organization. Put extra efforts as an older employee. So that's how we see the concept of OCB. But these are the international dimensions which are very popular. So I will not too much elaborate on that, just make a passing reference. First one is called civic virtue. So you know what is called civic virtue. As a citizen, you have certain virtue to be followed. Then altruism. What is altruism? Opposite of egoism. Altruist, who has concern for others' well-being. And then egoist is always selfish and self-centered. Then you know what is called conscientiousness, very systematic, very scientific. Then interpersonal harmony, you are not hurting people, you are always helping others. Sportsmanship, you will take everything positively, and then you are very courteous, very friendly with people. These are the dimensions of OCB. So what I'll do now, I will discontinue the topic here, then we'll come back. uh, just for about 5 minutes I'll give you a break, and then we'll start with the last concept called organizational effectiveness. With that, we will be discontinuing the topic and then get ready for the model question paper or sample questions. That's what I would say. So I hope we are doing some meaningful work today. So let's have a break for 5 minutes. So welcome back once again. We are going to start with our new topic. In the meantime, I realize that some more explanation is needed on these dimensions of OCB, namely what is called civic virtue, altruism, conscientiousness, interpersonal harmony, sportsmanship, and courtesy. So let's slowly move. I think let's not be in a hurry. What is civic virtue? Civic virtue refers to active contributions. One is willing to stand up to protect the reputation of the company. That's what we call the civic virtue. We are eager to tell outsiders good news about the company. And then when somebody speaks bad about the company, we will not be silent. We'll always make constructive suggestions for the improvement of the business. And we are always actively attending the meetings that are held in the organization. That's what we call civic virtue. Then altruism. People are willing to help others adjust to the environment, especially the colleagues, new colleagues, and willing to help them solve their problems, work related problems, and also willing to help them in coordinating and communicating. That's what we call altruism. That means you have concern for others and you express that concern. That is more important. Then conscientiousness. Lot of what I would say rules, rule oriented behavior. You always follow procedures, rules, and you would take your job seriously, and very rarely you make mistakes, and you always take new challenging assignments, and you work very hard to improve the quality of work outputs. Then you always come early and then start work immediately. You will not waste time on the work. Then interpersonal harmony, avoiding harm. You do not use any of those negative tactics at the workplace. You don't use, you don't seek personal influences, and you're not gaining any benefit from anybody else using harmful effects on interpersonal harmony. You don't misuse your power for selfish ends, and you don't take credits, you don't blame, you do not avoid blame. So if you make a mistake, you would accept it. That's the meaning of it. You don't take credits for whatever you have done. You don't speak bad about the supervisors and colleagues, and you're always protecting the resource of the company. You don't have any personal business in the workplace. So you don't use company resources for the personal gain, and you don't think sick leave as a benefit. That means you would use sick leaves only genuinely. That's what we call interpersonal harmony, avoidance of harm, sportsmanship. So somewhere in the brackets I mentioned that this is very high among Chinese, whereas sportsmanship is very high among US. And then that's how I don't have much information about the others, but I would say DDL is the place where you can see a lot of information about how countries are. In fact, we can do a small research study also. Each of you can take these dimensions and search them on the internet, which country is very high on which of these dimensions. Like interpersonal harmony, Chinese are very high, whereas sportsmanship, Americans are very high. So they avoid consuming a lot of time complaining about silly matters, we say trivial matters. Avoid making mountains out of molehills, making bigger problems that are actually not. Avoid focusing on what's wrong with his or her situation rather than the positive side of it. This is what we call sportsmanship. Then courtesy. How courteous are you to the people around you? Avoid hurting other people's rights. Avoid taking actions that hurts others, and do not initiate actions before consulting with others that's likely to affect them, and try to avoid creating problems for your colleagues. That's what we call courtesy. So I'll stop here. We'll straight get into the new topic now. So, and the new topic is called organizational effectiveness. I think we'll take a pause for a while because it's a new topic. So this is, in fact, it's a tough topic of all because it's the last topic. So what is this concept called organizational effectiveness? That's our last topic for the season. And the peculiarity of this topic is that it falls in both the finance as well as behavioral science subject. In financial perspective, organizational effectiveness is as defined as the bottom line or the return on investments, the concept of profits. But for us, it is different because, in fact, while we were discussing in the topic relating to working with the groups, there also we came across this concept called effectiveness, group effectiveness. Effectiveness for whom was the big question there, and then effectiveness for employees as well as effectiveness for the organization. For organization, effectiveness is defined as task accomplishments, whereas for employees, effectiveness is defined as the member satisfaction. Your company is making a lot of money, lot of profits, but your employees are unhappy. Do you think your organization is effective? Definitely not. So an organization cannot be successful at the cost of employee dissatisfaction. That's the hypothesis that we take. So therefore, let's slowly move into this concept. Why study this topic? Sorry. Then the importance of this concept called organizational effectiveness. What is this concept of OE? Then what factors contribute to organizational effectiveness? And we'll see a model. It's a theoretical model actually. We don't have much support for that. But maybe you can, what you can do is you can explore some internet sources to find out the models of organizational effectiveness. So let us see what does it mean. If a company uses resources, naturally it will be effective because conversion of resources into finished goods, raw material into finished goods, that results in profit making. Similarly, so in hospitals, if every resource in the hospital is converted and translated towards better health care, I'm sure your organizations are successful. That's what we define as effectiveness. But this concept has attracted the owners of the firm more than anybody else. And that's why you have to study it because hospital managers are accountable to their owners or stakeholders. I think, sorry, instead of that, we'll say shareholders, someone who has equity invested in it, owner's equity, you call it. So, your job is to multiply that equity. That is the job of a hospital manager. So therefore, since it has attracted the owners more, you are more sensitive towards this. You have to ensure that your organizations are effective. And not only that, your organization's survival is dependent upon this concept. Not only that, effective organizations have an impact on the society because you have to pay back to the society. That's the impact. After after profit making, a portion of the profit has to be given to the society in the name of corporate social responsibility, in the name of charity, in the name of taxes, in the name of taking care of the well-being of the society or the people around your company. You cannot spoil the environment around the company where people are living. I've seen backyard of the hospitals where people dump all the used material, whereas in the backyard you will find a lot of colonies living with people around, children playing around. And if you want to make your hospitals competitive across, you have to be conscious of this concept called organizational effectiveness. So why is this so important now? It influences or affects the relationship between employees and the managers. It's also important because it satisfies all the stakeholders. If your company is making profits, every stakeholder has a benefit. Employees get bonus, distributors get their what you call pay, then you have to pay the money to all your suppliers, then government gets its taxes, municipality gets all those payments to be made. So all the other stakeholders benefit from you. So this is everybody's concern, actually every stakeholder's concern, and that's why effectiveness is an important concept. And as already stated that it determines the future survival of your business, so therefore this is a very serious topic. So let's go through the definition. Now here I wish to draw your attention to two gentlemen by name Georgopoulos. Can you see this name? Georgopoulos and Mann in 1952. I hope it is streaming, everybody. Please let me know whether it is streaming. Yeah, thank you. So where are we? We are talking about the concept actually, yeah. So in the concept, what you can notice is two gentlemen by name Georgopoulos and Mann. These two people are very popular in what you call hospital management literature. They were the pioneers actually in writing books on hospital management. They were the first people to write a book called The Community General Hospital. It's out of print because 1952, you can imagine, is out of print. But you may try in Google Books. If you find in Google Books, you can read this book. They were the early contributors to the literature on hospital management. So from their book, this definition is taken. I read this book while I was at Apollo Hospitals. Now I have not seen this book for almost 20, more than 20 years now. So they were the early pioneers. In fact, I would say pioneers in defining what is called organizational effectiveness. And that book is all about hospitals. So what they did is they tried all these concepts and used them on hospitals. That's why it's very interesting to me. So what does it mean? Let us see. Organizational effectiveness is the extent to which an organization with given certain resources like money, material, etc., and means, that means technology, to achieve its objectives without placing undue strain on its members. So that's how, utilizing all the resources to achieve the business goals without putting a lot of strain on the members. Such organizations are called effective organizations according to Georgopoulos and Mann. Whereas in operations research, we say it is the ratio of energetic input to the energetic output. Energy in the sense all the resources put together. So for the given input, what is the output? For the given input, what is the output? So that's the way we define what is called the effectiveness. Similarly, it is maximization of return to the organization by all means. That's another way of defining what is called effectiveness. Finally, now we'll see some experts commenting on this concept. Steers is another very popular gentleman. Of course, I don't hear much about him in the recent times. Early 80s, he was very popular. What he defined effectiveness is the end product of managerial policies and practices, organizational structure, technology, external environment, employee characteristics, and the climate. So what does it mean finally? The entire subject of OB, when practiced sincerely, results in effectiveness according to him. These are all OB activities, OB topics. So when the entire OB subject is practiced sincerely, you will see your organizations successful or effective. Now, what factors contribute to effectiveness? Leadership, management decisions, organizational philosophy, objectives and policies, organizational structure, and technology. If all these are in good shape, those organizations could be effective. Now, this is an interesting model actually collected from various sources. What causes effectiveness? You can see here. Stress could be one reason. Motivation and morale of the employees, commitment among them, conflict resolution strategies, performance, decision making, and problem solving. But all these on their own will not contribute to effectiveness, but sorry, these are all supported by these variables. That means they you have to put a multiplication symbol. For example, causal, that means causes. These are the causative factors. You put a big into here. That's called these and this multiply. So when these are multiplied with these, then your ordinations are effective. That's called the output. Sorry. Many times it takes you to that last slide. So these are the intervening variables which are multiplied by this. That's why it's called intervening. So ordinational effectiveness is not merely determined by these concepts alone, but these concepts in consultation with these concepts contribute to that. For example, leadership strategies, management decisions, philosophy, objectives policies, structure and technology. In the presence of these, the causal factors contribute to the output of the in the organization called worker management relations, costs, sales, earnings, and turnover. That's how we define what is called organizational effectiveness. So that's it for us. I will discontinue the topic. I would simply say congratulations on successfully completing this course, at least in theory. Of course, you still have to take your examinations. I hope you will take those examinations very seriously. So now what we will do, I will discontinue this topic. We'll get back to the syllabus copy again, and then we'll slowly move through for simple questions. So what you can do as fast as possible, you can write down those questions and make your notes from internet or from the books. I have shown you the source epub.pdf. So you can download books from that and then read them, because there is no substitute for reading. I will also send you the slides, but these slides will not help you enough. You have to definitely read a lot if you really want to write a lot. So once again, congratulations to all of you, and then let's get back to the syllabus copy. Let's just try to connect the Word file so that you can see the syllabus. Yeah, I think it's visible now. So that's our syllabus. So what we will do, I will try to give you a list of questions from each unit, and that's it. We will call it a day. I hope the expectations are very clear. So let me list out some of the questions so that you can note down those questions as fast as you can. So even if you are missing some sentences, you may borrow it from your friends instead of asking me to repeat it. I will try to spell them slowly, and at least twice I will do that, so that slow writers can also catch up with my words. Otherwise, you borrow from those who are fast writers. I'll put it in that sense. So let's start with the first unit called OB, Basic Concepts and Models. So let's start with question number 1. Explain the importance of OB in hospital management. What are the contributions of social sciences to OB? Explain typology of OB. What are offensive, defensive, and proactive behaviors? What are offensive, defensive, and proactive behaviors? Next one. What are the fundamental concepts of OB? Next one. Explain the models of OB. Critically analyze them. So we move on to Unit 2, personality. Define personality. Explain its importance. What are the theories of personalities? Explain MBTI. And its implications. Explain any one of the theories of personality with action plans. Write a note on Big Five personality theory. Let's move on to the third unit, motivation. Define motivation. Explain the importance of motivation in hospitals. Write a note on content and process theories of motivation. What are the implications of theories of motivation for hospital managers? With that, we move on to the unit 4. Explain the two important reasons for studying group behavior. Explain the two important reasons for studying group behavior. Explain the model of working with the groups. Write a note on group formation variables. How do groups develop? Explain development variables. So let's move on to unit 5. Define stress. Explain the relationship between stress and productivity. What are the stressors? What are the dimensions of stress? What are the consequences of stress? Write a note on organizational support. What are the coping mechanisms for overcoming stress? We move on to the 6th unit. Define organizational culture. Explain international cultures. What is organizational climate? What are the dimensions of organizational climate? Explain the model of organizational climate. So we'll move on to the seventh unit called concept of change. Define change and change management. Why change management is important to hospital managers. What are the forces of change? Why people resist change? What are the strategies for overcoming resistance to change? Explain Levin's model of change management. So we move on to the eighth unit. Define organizational commitment. What are the antecedents of commitment and the consequences of commitment? Define employee empowerment. What are the antecedents of employee empowerment? And what are the dimensions of employee empowerment? How to empower our employees in the hospitals? What is OCB? Explain its importance and dimensions. Define employee engagement. Define employee engagement. Explain the model of engagement in a hospital context. So with that we move on to the last topic called effectiveness. What is organizational effectiveness? Explain the dimensions of effectiveness. How do we measure effectiveness in a hospital context? So that's it, nothing much. So if you have anything to say, please put that in the live chat because I've finished off with my work. I hope you have enjoyed it with all tough times I know during this lockdown. Lot of difficulties I know, constantly sitting before a computer screen and learning. But the life is all about virtual hereafter. So once again, thank you very much and I wish you all the best. If you want to put any feedback about these sessions, what kind of improvements that I should make for the future, just put some comments so that it will be a lesson for me. Anybody wants to put some feedback notes, you can put there. So do you want to say anything about the course? the way we have handled it. Somebody can put some comments like a feedback. So once again, thank you so much for your cooperation and involvement in this course. In fact, for me also it is a lot of learning because I had to redo the entire PowerPoint files after a long gap. I'm sure I wouldn't have touched upon these PowerPoint files if not for this, what I would say, online sessions. I was depending more on the old PowerPoint files, but because of these online sessions, I had to improve upon them to make it more visible. Because if they were offline classes, probably with one slide I would have been explaining more. But online classes, more content has to be shown on the screen, I realize. So those were some of the reasons why I had to do a lot of work on these slides. So anyway, once again, thank you so much, and I wish you all the best for your examinations, and then enjoy changes in your life. Once again, thank you so much, and good night, and have a nice weekend. Thank you so much.